Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Jeff Rock, and welcome to another D. Hilton Associates webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about one of HR's favorite topics here, the performance review and what has changed and what we need to be taken into consideration.
Are you being facetious?
Just a little bit here. You know, it's both a love and hate relationship when it comes down to the HR folks here.
Okay.
But we've got a lot to talk about, of course, as usual. But first, let's take care of a couple of administrative items. We will be recording this webinar, so you can find a copy of this along with all the other webinars that we've had in the past. They're going to be on our website at dhilton.com/webinars. Lots of great content, lots of great information there, so feel free to go through all of that information. We'll also be sending out a follow-up email that will include the slide deck that we're going through today. So you will receive a copy of the slide deck, whether you're actually here on the time or not. You'll be able to get the follow-up on that piece of it there. Additionally, we'll send out a survey. Let us know how we're doing. You can tell us a couple of items that you liked or disliked, or if there's a particular topic that you'd like to address going forward into a webinar, let us know. We love hearing from you guys. A lot of these topics that we choose are from the clients that we work with, telling us, hey, we'd like to learn a little bit more about that, so we'd be happy to pull that piece together. With all that out of the way, hopefully everybody's settled in. Allow me to introduce Mr. John Andrews. How are you, John?
Good afternoon, Jeff. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for joining. I'm doing great. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, of course.
My new grandson.
That too. That it ranks very highly, okay. But just a little bit behind performance reviews.
I just have 2 or 3 hours worth of video I thought we could share.
I think everybody would be on board with that.
James Dale Frost the Fifth.
The Fifth. I mean,
we call him Cinco.
That's going to be a namesake to live up to there. So good.
Guess what Friday is?
What's Friday?
Cinco de Mayo.
Well, yes.
Party's already started.
I was still in Cinco. I didn't think of Cinco de Mayo. I still see it as what is it? May the 4th. I'm missing that one. So Revenge of the 5th.
There you go. Well, with that out of the way, I think we have a topic today that's near and dear to everyone's heart. When you saw the slide, our title page here, me and you, Jeff, have been tackling this for literally since you've been here.
Yeah.
And the first time we did this type of presentation was in 21. But I've been tackling this for our clients since 1986. And we've always stipulated from day one that nobody likes it. Nobody gets anything out of it. It takes a lot of time. And other than that, it's awesome. But with all jokes aside, this concept of we have to address risk, mitigate risk, but not be afraid of risk. And why do we do appraisals from the risk perspective? Why?
We want to make sure everything is getting done in compliance and making sure everybody's doing what they need to do on time, policy, procedure, and process.
And if they don't?
We're able to then remove them or cull them from the herd or have a reason to stand on. So when we say, all right, it is time for you to invite you to seek excellence elsewhere, we don't get a lawsuit on the other side of it.
Right. And I think that's driven the process in a lot of cases. And so basically what happens is we put this iron-tight process together where we document things that are failings or successes, but then you look at the time expended by frontline managers on this, it's 80-20 negative positive, or it's 90-10, or it's 95-5. So the people that get the shorts, stick in or in this straw in this, what is it? Short
shrift.
Yeah, that's the word.
We'll go with that one. The shortest straw. We blend them all together.
The people that don't get the attention are the people that should be rewarded and recognized. Mm-hmm. So some of the techniques and concepts that we've seen in the last 2 years, we want to share with you guys and see if that's something that you can use in your shop. There's going to be little things you like, little twist, and that's what we call, that's the evolution, and that's the only thing we can ask for. Can we make this year a little bit better than last year? And that's kind of our program today. Okay. So with that said, agenda real quick. The concepts we're going to go through today is devolution, de-evolution, help me.
I read that and I had to go back and make sure it was spelled correctly, but I called it de-evolution.
Okay, we're going to use the working thing, de-evolution, but that's what's in the dictionary, right? We're supposed to use.
It works.
But what happens is the holy grail is how to do things smarter, faster, quicker, shorter, right? And so we got some techniques there. The idea that we are definitely in a world of disruption, and how does an appraisal performance management process encourage people to take the risk, and move their skill sets down the road when even last year might not be what we need. Every year that changes, and we're raising the bar. And finally, how do we integrate this with pay is important. And then the rating scales. The bane of my existence is average, satisfactory, meets expectations, because nobody's any of that stuff. And we spend a lot of time giving people higher scores or lower scores because we just are uncomfortable with semantics. Talk a little bit about that. And then finally, this is supposed to be a structured exercise to have a conversation and not, catching you doing something wrong. So that's what we're going to go through today. So classic here is, we look at this generation and they say, what do I want? In the past, we'd ask employees and it's all about my check. How am I doing, my boss, my annual review, my weakness, my job. And then for the future, we're trying to pivot to this idea is my purpose, development. I want to coach. I want ongoing conversation. I want to highlight my strengths, and I want to talk about work-life balance. This is the classic, there's no Jeff and team. Look at all those my's up there, Jeff. Jeez.
You did this slide just for me, didn't you?
That's you.
I like this.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. So the idea is, we're not joking about this. It's very important to say what the person in front of us that's the employee, what can we do that would resonate with them, motivate with them, and recognize what they've done? And this is the types of things you look at. So this is your first benchmark, guys out there. When you look at your appraisal, how does it match up? Do you talk about what the purpose of it, how is this person developing? Are you being the coach that they're, the mentor that they're looking for, and how's the work-life balance?
And this taps into that age-old start with why. I mean, if you look at the left side, okay, my paycheck, is that the why you're here?
Yeah.
Is it the annual review, my weakness, or all that kind of stuff? Is that the why? If you look at the future focused, that's really the why. It's the purpose. It's the my life side of things. And if you're designing a system that talks to those, you're actually going to get positive results on both sides.
And that trumps the psychology of a paycheck.
Absolutely.
I mean, and we've talked about this on webinars before. You give somebody a bump, whether it's 1%, 10%, or 50%, it lasts one paycheck.
We have an extremely high tolerance to being overcompensated.
It's one paycheck. And then we're back to the things that we're still griping about or not fulfilled. And again, as we pivot to reinforce what we're talking about, those future things, go through your system and say, how close do we get that?
Mm-hmm.
Get to those types of conversations with our employees, and we're off to a good start.
So the other side of this, why we have to reimagine this, is that invariably, most managers do not feel like their actual pay for performance system, their performance management system is actually doing what they want it to do. If you take the law statistics into consideration here, we're looking at 95%. You plus or minus 5% for statistics wise, that could be 100% or 90%, which way we're looking at that one, that do not think that their organization's performance management system actually works. The other reason
what does it take for me to change it, though? Do we have to go 99 or 102%?
Yeah, where's the threshold there?
we're pretty high up on the list, right?
That's pretty substantial. And the other reason to consider this is because most leaders are not great at providing performance feedback and coaching. So if we keep hammering home these systems that are all metric driven, all these other pieces of the puzzle where they're not good at delivering this information, it's not a natural process. We try to simplify it into, okay, put a number and, add it up. Did they come in early? We're not getting to the root cause of things.
We're good at math.
We're great at math. We got a lot of finance people going on here. We're able to manage that. But from the HR side, I don't know.
Well, I've always taken the position, the number one weakness of a volunteer is how to set a goal.
Yeah.
The number one weakness of a CEO is how to set a goal. The number one weakness of a branch manager is how to set a goal. And then we're building these programs on these quantifiable KPIs are these cross-selling narratives, and then we're missing the point of how we can coach and develop those folks to get them to look forward and not just historically, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do this.
Yeah, it's kind of the age-old average of, what gets measured gets done. So they really wanted to measure those pieces of it, the why that was attached with how those were being accomplished, or what was going to be next for somebody's career, or how long we retain that person wasn't in that metric.
Yeah. And what are we talking about? Labor shortages, supply and demand, leadership continuity, and all those things are coming to fruition now.
Absolutely. So the other piece of this one is that the executive team, which is really where culture is actually derived from, for the most part, they're not speaking to this as a core business item.
Yeah.
It's something that has to go all the way from the top of the organization, the same message resonating down through the entire organization. And where, a lot of people ask me, how do we determine culture or how do we talk about our culture? One of the biggest things there is that executives model the behavior that they want pushed down through the entire organization. So if you're going to be focusing on this performance management process and improving that, if your executive team is going, that's great, I hope everybody does that and all that kind of stuff, if they're not living and breathing that, it's not going to go down through the entire
So
organization.
don't do as I do as I say.
Exactly.
11% of executives self-reporting that they're exhibiting or modeling the behaviors they want.
Yep, that's it.
That's a low number.
That's quite a low number. So if you think about what we say and what we do and how all those pieces come together, what we're saying and what we're doing is anything but similar in many cases. The other piece of this is we have to take into consideration how people want to receive feedback. This is simple and straightforward that most people don't receive feedback in the way they would prefer to receive it. If you pat somebody on the back and they are a tremendous introvert, well, you just made an uncomfortable situation. They would prefer through an email. Super uncomfortable. So taking your team into consideration and understanding how they would like to receive that information is a big portion of this and something that I don't think should be taken lightly.
And again, there's not one formula, and I've said many times in my presentations, the definition of a good coach is, Jeff, I can beat you with your team or I can beat you with my team. Which one do you want?
Yeah. What are we doing today?
And so, if I'm working with your team, the John Andrews way might not work. Jeff Rock way might not work. What is going to work and resonate with that individual to get them to do their best and to feel like they're a contributor? That's a good coach. That's a good leader.
Absolutely.
So again, this the kind of another to from chart that we're looking at is, if we call it management, we just go to the front of the line to say, I'm going to catch things right, I'm going to catch things wrong, and we're going to be identifying things that are misaligned, ineffective. We're not going to be looking at feedback because it's going to be more confrontational because you didn't do this. Yes, I did. You always do that. No, I don't always do that. And we're going to find out what's inherently unfair about the process, and employees are going to focus on that.
Yeah, I love that. We'll dig into that a little bit more because, how many people have sat down to their performance review and felt like this is going to be a warm and inviting you're immediately on the defensive just because you've been conditioned to, you're going in, you've got to defend yourself because they've got this laundry list of things that you've done wrong. Or if you're a tremendous performer, you're going in still with a laundry list to defend how much of a tremendous performer you are. You never go in going, yeah, this is going to be great.
That's such a great point. Like, if you're going to do an internal assessment of where you stand, if you're realistically looking at your current system out there, guys, think of it as, I got 100 cookies for you, Jeff, and every time I catch you something doing wrong, I'm going to take a cookie. You didn't show up on time, at all. You didn't dress right. You screwed up that form, you didn't answer that call, and whatever cookies are left, you get. As opposed to starting, which I think is better aligned with the member experience, is every day we have to prove it.
Yep.
You start with no cookies, Jeff,
mm-hmm.
and every time I see something right, or you do it well, or you got happy members in front of you, we're adding cookies to that pile. We get to the same number, but which one do you want to eat? No, that's not rhetorical, Jeff.
Oh man, I'm waiting for the inspirational talk here.
No. But it's idea. We can probably come to the same amount of cookies. It's just one's going to leave. We're going to leave.
It's going to have a better taste in your mouth.
Best cookie ever.
Absolutely.
And as simple as that sounds, go through your process now and look if it's takeaway or building up.
Yeah, and I can just go crazy on the whole psychology of we seek reward and stay away from punishment.
Yeah.
And if you're setting your system up to be that, as you're talking about that hall monitor, that setting it up to be a punishment, you're not necessarily seeking out the way to do the better job. You're seeking out the way to not be punished, which is totally different than seeking out the reward.
So risk is kind of a theme today, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm an employee, am I going to take a risk? In procedure, it says I'm supposed to do this, but this member really needs me to do just a little bit different. Well, I'm not doing that. Or not my department, or you're going to have to wait till the person gets back because I'm not sticking my neck out. You get that in your environment, that's not the member experience that we're shooting for. So as we transition or pivot to development, setting the model, and again, if only 11% of managers are exhibiting the behaviors that they want, we got a lot of work to do there. The idea that a coach is always coaching, always seeing the opportunity to fix something, not to nitpick, just say, we're going to tidy it up and make it stronger, and next time we'll do it better. And then accountability. The idea is like in basketball, I think it's in Hoosiers when they have the 2 free throws at the end of the game, and when the coach says, when he makes the first one, what? He's going to make the first one. He's accountable. He's practiced a lot. He's going to make that free throw. What are we going to do on the second? We're going to call the timeout. We're going to go down the court. What are we going to do? That's what we want, in the DNA of the Cragans that are going to differentiate their service.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, we have to kind of start looking at some of the root issues. And this is not a list that's going to surprise anyone that has dealt with this in the past. What are some of the common complaints that when you say, okay, performance management, immediately pop into your head? We're talking about the whole lack of, and I think one of the most important thing here is, and to your point, goal setting. We have to understand how the performance management process ties into the goal setting. And it can't be just focused, or it shouldn't be just focused on those technical, tactical pieces of things. Even as we go up through the organization, we've seen some executives with technical, tactical pieces in their performance reviews. Yeah. So the feedback is obviously a big portion of this, especially with the culture and the workforce that we have today. We're not giving enough feedback. It comes at the end of the year. I can't remember what I had for breakfast 2 days ago. I can't remember what I did 6 or 7 months ago. And if you're going to be talking,
you have 2 babies at home.
Well, exactly.
You're not sleeping.
No, sleep is something that other people do, and I've seen on TV. But the other piece of it is that it's usually, again, we go into this whole defensive process when we come in there. We're not even listening to the few random nuggets of good information. We're just waiting for those moments to defend ourselves.
You know what's interesting about that, Jeff? Is we do a study about every 2 years, and we look at performance management practices. And so one of the first questions we ask, are you focal point, meaning everybody gets it done at the same time, or do you do it on anniversary dates? And it flips. It's like beautifully in half. Like it's 49-51, 48-52. There's no pure pattern. But when you look at the credit unions that do it on anniversary dates, when you look at those managers and you ask the HR person, how does it go? Well, I'm always trying to get people to fill it out, don't be late, trying to give them a heads up, be proactive, and all that stuff. But what happens is if you got 10 employees, what happens is, well, I'm kind of busy, so 2 I'll do next month, even though they're due this month. And then, 2 are due this month, so that's 4. And then, that one's next month, I'll do it. So they end up batching it anyway. Mm-hmm. So in this process of I have to do it, it's a requirement. It actually displays itself in how you execute the process. And to the employee, then we start to get, it's perceived as unfair. They don't care about it. They said the exact same thing as they did last year, on and on and on. So I think that's a key point there.
Absolutely. So last but not least, and a lot of times people have been looking at is the rating systems, and we'll dig into that a little bit more, but we really think that the rating systems need to be reevaluated. Don't throw them away. No. That was a trend for quite some time. We're not going to use a rating system. People like to be able to apply a rating system. It makes sense in our logic, so those are okay. But just kind of tweaking the rating system to make sure it fits in the process today.
Yeah, good point. Very good point. So, we do a study every 2 years or so to look at what are you doing in the evolution of the process or devolution of the process, and look at the common things people are doing right now. They're trying to simplify the rating process, 1 out of 3, make it less of a formal process, 30%, separating the comp from the performance. And that's what I personally struggle with. I just think we don't have the tools. We need to strive to keep pay for performance in credit unions, and it helps us reward and recognize the folks that are doing a good job. And then you go down the list. So my concern is like when you say, we're going to use technology, a piece of software. Be careful. It may or may not be the change that you're looking for. It could become a NASCAR pit stop. It could be faster. I can do that performance management in 4 minutes, and Jeff says he can do it in 3 minutes.
I can name that tune in one.
And the employee says, "What the heck just happened?" So, the idea is let's look at this meaningful. And I think the ratings is where we have our best chance to upgrade and improve and enhance what we're doing. So that's what we're going to talk about later today.
And like I talked about with this whole process quite a few years ago, it set the stage really, I hope, really well. The fact that a tool isn't going to solve the problem. It's a matter of we've got to fix the tool, but we also have to have the process, the culture, the pieces of it that come along with that tool. Otherwise, to your point exactly, it's just one more tool that we're using and leveraging that really doesn't drive the results that we want.
Well, my biggest gripe about software is you can push a button and it'll spit out a beautiful phrase for you. Jeff, you are an asset to D. Hilton Associates. And then next year, I push the button. Jeff, you are an asset to D. Hilton Associates.
Fantastic. I've evolved and grown. This is fantastic.
And when you're 40 years with a company, I don't know if I'll be pushing the button. Maybe I'll just be with my mind.
I already know. Jeff, you're a valuable asset.
You're an asset to D. Hilton Associates. And employees, it's activity versus impact. The activity is we sourced the software. We put all the parameters in, we hit the button, we did it and saved time, or did it save time? And then what's the impact? Does the employee have better engagement? No. Do they actually trust us more? No. And we just go down the list. So the idea is that how can we make this a conversation is what we're aiming for here.
Yeah, if everybody comes out of the meeting feeling like it was a waste of time, we have officially wasted that time.
Oh.
And it's such a missed opportunity when it comes down to it, the potential for growth, potential for movement, and potential to actually move the needle where we need it to go.
The highlight of my year is when my youngest daughter calls me to tell me about her performance review.
Love to hear about this.
Well, she's a 20-something, and I don't think that was fair. I don't think they know me. I've been here 5 years. Is this all they could come up with? And I go, keep giving.
This is ammo. Thank you.
Thank you. But as we go on here, so what about the alternatives? I mean, some people have literally said we're not doing them anymore.
Yeah.
And the risk or what?
And eliminating them altogether is just one of those things that it's not a great idea. I mean, it kind of goes back to the whole thing of when they changed those schools from, we're not going to give you an A or B or C. We're going to give you a banana. We're going to give you a grape. It was this weird rating system that didn't quite make sense because they didn't want to technically rate someone for a particular area. And there's a lot of risk that just kind of goes along with that.
I went to one of those schools in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Did you?
And it's like you were in a grade, but you were you're self-directed. Johnny, would you like to take a math test today? No, I would not.
Not today. I don't feel like it. Thank you.
I was English. I'm 6 grades ahead, and in math, I was still trying to use numbers bigger than my, count higher than my finger count would go.
There you go.
But the idea is that it's extremely risky to eliminate. So because you didn't solve anything.
Yeah.
If the issues of having employees more engaged, it wasn't the system's fault. It was our fault for not finding a connection that resonates with them. But giving it away, it's time consuming. Nobody looks at them on and on. Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with those arguments, but the answer is not to say, poof, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, we need some form of framework in which to place all these pieces together. And the other thing of it is that kind of to the point of the differentiation between a tool solving the problem, if you implement something and there's no training along with that one, how can we actually leverage the tool at all? We just have no way to actually go with that one. So any change without training, actually giving some form of conversation to the staff that's going to be performing this, we have to do it. We have to invest that time to get it there.
And again, I use the term muscle memory. When I see a frontline manager see something right, they're not waiting 6 months to say, I'm going to put this in the appraisal, oh boy, or if something goes wrong, I go say, you always have gotten that wrong. They're using the idea that there's training of how to present that argument or that discussion, and it's not just, aha, now I have something to put on that form.
There you go. And then the conversations. I mean, when it comes down to it, we don't want to just go in there with a Scantron, essentially go right down the line. All right, you did this good, this bad, this good, or have a conversation. Actually take into consideration what's going on. What do you want for this individual? How can you help grow and help them help the department in a long run? So invariably, it's more about having that conversation than it is having this long form in which you can kind of bubble things in or rate it by a mathematical equation.
And let's be realistic, is you do all that super well, they're not staying 40 years. They're not staying 30 years. We think this gets 1 and 2 more years of the relationship down the road before something might happen. They move on, they get promoted, they go to a different department, or they choose to not be with the organization. So none of this is going to address that. But if I invest in a person, they stay one more year in the retail side, huge win.
Absolutely.
Huge win. And that's, again, how do we differentiate member experience? Technical expertise in front of that member every day that knows their job. That's a winning combination. So, when people compare themselves, even though they're not supposed to, so the idea is that you have an opportunity to make sure that people understand where they stand. So they're looking how you interact. Think of all the dynamics or the dyads that go on and the triads and on and on and on. People will look about who gets ahead here.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll look at, well, who succeeded? What do I have to model to be successful? And then if people put themselves before their team, is there a consequence or in front of the member? And when you set up systems that say, I got $1,000 to split among 5 people, and if the reward and recognition is spit out in a certain manner, if you be careful how you allocate that money. If everybody gets the same amount, our superstars are going to say, well, why kill myself?
I'm not working hard.
And if the person doesn't get as much as everybody else says, well, why didn't I get as much? Training opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, you always get a cough before a 3-day weekend and make it a 4-day weekend. We're not talking about John, but John, still has 300 and something sick days.
But we're not talking about John.
You know how it's 4:45 and the phone rings? You go, well, you can't hear it because you're already out the door.
You already left. I had that cough.
And, John's been here. So again, the resource competition is something we have to be careful about when it comes to awards. And what was really interesting in the 22 and 23 merit increase cycles is we threw a lot of inflation money at people, and we threw it consistently. And the message was good. It's cost more for gas to get to work. We know there's some pain. We want to recognize that. Hey, we used to do 3% merit budgets. Now we're going to do 6% this year. It's not about the money. It's about the recognition and how we're communicating that money. And we gave a lot of same across the board stuff to folks. And it remains to see if that's going to retain people, or is it just all of a sudden our superstars aren't differentiated? So we have to be careful and monitor. A performance evaluation system that says, thank you for doing this during the times of COVID, huge support to the idea of not just, here's some more gas money.
Yeah, it's a reward and recognition that is custom tuned for what that person provided to the organization rather than an entitlement. If it's just because, there you go. Well, yeah, people are going to be entitled. Yeah. They're going to feel like I deserve this, whatever the case may be. But if you have it custom designed to reward and recognize, 1, the right type of behavior, 2, the right type of risk taking, you're in a much better position and you have a system that reinforces that, you're going to be in good shape.
Jeff and I were joking before we started about, was this the best time to do a webinar? Because the Fed just announced a 1/4 point bump, and we're going, do you really think the 24-year-old teller is, waiting by the computer to see what coming across the screen?
The rate is going to be,
Well, if things are, inflation based and rate based, they're going to do that. But that's not what we're trying to measure.
Yeah, and it goes back to the age-old adage of comparison is the thief of joy. So it comes down to, let's not compare out. Let's talk about what you've done, what you were able to do, and what your contribution culminated to your portion of this. Oh, your cookies.
Yeah.
How many cookies you got?
can make it brownies. I know what you like.
Brownies are fantastic, though.
And for the folks that don't know that, Jeff is totally fueled by Big Red soda pop. You get him a Big Red, he'll do anything.
Sugar, caffeine, that's just the way to go.
But, we finish up the slide. Only 22% of employees strongly agree that the pay and incentives motivate them to do what's best. And I need that to be 1 out of 3, 1 out of 2, not 1 out of 5.
Yeah, again, I think this comes back to that we're reinforcing the behavior of avoiding the punishment, not actually seeking out that reward of how to be better.
Of course. And I'm going to continue this theme. If your organization is going down that path, it lasts 1 paycheck. Simple as that. So we go to this new era where we're evolving to fintechs, digital delivery, and what made you successful as a retail person 5, 10, and 20 years ago just doesn't even come close to now. Jeff, your team does a ton of market pricing, for our sales administration clients. And when you're doing market pricing, you're building premiums in because even the tellers need to know when the iPhone, does an operating system upgrade, it's your fault when the home banking doesn't work or
Absolutely.
the mobile banking doesn't work. So the core competencies will never die that make us special and differentiate us in service. But now we have this another layer of what it's going to be a techie and a service provider.
Yeah.
That's a unicorn.
And that's the interesting aspect of that. The majority is often wrong because it's those disruptors that come out of the middle of nowhere. And it's the age-old thing of, Blockbuster versus Netflix. Oh, the only way to do one thing is this way. And voila. Good
No
segue.
wonder that was on the top of your head. It was the next slide.
Good
Smart
segue.
pants.
All right, let me flip my page over so I can see. Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah. Tell us more about Blockbuster, Jeff.
No, nobody knows that story. Well, it's just the majority in the concept of those kind of pieces. Everybody does it this way. It's the best practice. It was the best practice to do it that particular way until that disruptor came out and said, guess what? I have a better way to do it. And watch this.
So, if you're scratching your head, why does this integrate with the topic? It says, I need frontline managers to be transformational now. When we do organizational reviews, people want us to fix transactional issues. And I say, well, I can fix a transactional issue, but in 6 months, I'll have another transactional issue. So how am I getting frontline managers to be, coaches and counselors and guides, through some really interesting times? And so sometimes it says we take people from the outside, that they can look at it differently. So tell me, anyone out there that has a C-suite type job, you got two conflicting accountabilities right now. You got to be moving your core business to whatever digital means. You got to be investing in new stuff, and then you got to keep members happy, and that's juggling. So the idea is that in the culture, if we can get performance management to reinforce the culture, what it means to work here, what it means to be servants to a membership, what it means to differentiate what we do when we're in a commodities business. Commodities mean you can get a checking account anywhere, If we can communicate what makes this place special and people believe that, we have the ultimate story, not-for-profit financial cooperative. We're here for this community, and we're here to make everyone's life better. And we need to keep that. We never can forget where we came from, but we always need these new people to move us down the road. So when you go back and look at your performance management, are you rewarding and recognizing the people that get disruption, that are executing transformation? And it sounds like buzzwords. It sounds almost like a TED Talk when you use words like that.
TED Talk bingo over here.
Are you doing that?
I'm winning so far.
Oh, excellent. But we're joking about it, but those are the things that's going to make people successful. So, finish some of those stories there, Jeff, on the other companies there.
No, these are your company. I got the Blockbuster one. You've got the Kodak. I always like that one.
Well, when I do training frontline managers, I always say, how would you like to be a typewriter manufacturer today? And let's do strategic planning. Do we change the keys? Is QWERTY? Do we really want QWERTY?
Yeah, let's put it in alphabetical order. That always worked out very well. Well, the other piece of this one is that the biggest kind of managers coming to the table saying, look, I don't have time to be a transformational leader. And we have to take that into consideration. We do have to look into that. And there is an opportunity to kind of reevaluate perhaps, one, how they're doing their day-to-day, but invariably, it is in a manager's job responsibility in their area that they are supposed to be developing and being transformative leaders.
That's a great point. I hope we get that on tape. That was really good. I like your thinking there. So in these companies, they knew at least 10 years ahead of time that the model wasn't viable. Who knew that first?
The leadership.
I'd argue the frontline manager or a salesperson, like, hey, would you like our photographic film for your XP12 4000? We don't have an XP12 4000 anymore. Oh, good to know.
Yeah.
So they, it is a bottom up. So I think when you look at your performance management position, if you're not rewarding frontline managers for transformation, That's important.
But
Now
yeah,
we do a lot of org reviews, and we see project management offices being and support to the functions to keep these two things going, tactical execution and forward or innovation. But even with that, I want to reward and recognize those managers that get the need to carve out time for this stuff.
And I know we're going to be tired of hearing this, but you're absolutely right. It's that reward and recognize the right type of behavior and the right type of risk taking. And if your managers are not being rewarded for being that transformational leader, they're not going to do it. They're going to focus on exactly avoiding the punishment that comes along with not doing a particular metric.
I talk about that in our business is, okay, we're busy, we have a lot of clients, and we finish a job, whether it was tough or easy, high five, client's happy, we're happy. And then during that point, you made 3 points, like we could do this better, I could shave some time off here, the client really wants this, but we're providing that. And then at the end of that, there's another job.
Mm-hmm.
And say, we're going to integrate those 3 new concepts. We don't have time.
Yep.
People are waiting, we got to get stuff to them. And every time we do that, you set back this transformation. So the folks that figure out how to combine those are very valuable in this market.
I love that. Anybody that's dealt with any type of template or Excel sheet that they've used in the past, and they're like, oh, I got to go back and fix that once I'm done with this project, and they never have the time to be able to do that. Same thing here, just on a grander scale.
I have to admit, I have this a cork board in my office, and I wrote something 7 years ago to fix, and I haven't fixed it yet, but the ink has actually turned yellow.
Oh, I
don't need a timestamp.
That's a top priority item right there.
Wild. And it is a priority, my gosh. So
I think we have differing definitions of the word priority.
So guys out there, if your biggest takeaway is going to be this next slide, we've been working with a number of credit unions the last 2 years, and when we look at the demographics of our employee base, we need to get more money, more recognition in front of people in frequent times, with more frequency.
Yep.
And so think about what we call things: the annual review, the annual merit increase, the end of year bonus, whatever you want to use. That's not jiving with the expectations of today's workforce. We got to get something in front of them to keep the momentum going. So one of the concepts that we think is working well, still in its infancy, and it's this idea, let's try for 4 touch points a year. So here's a model. So in the first quarter, let's do a classic performance appraisal and say, hey, you're hitting the mark, you're developing, we're really happy. Here's your merit increase. And in the second quarter, some type of gain share, how the business did, and not waiting to the end of the year, but not every quarter, because sometimes we can't move the needle on some of the things. So, every 6 months makes sense. So a 6-month recognition. And then the third quarter, another merit increase process. And in the fourth quarter, another gain share. Now, all the HR folks out there just threw something at me virtually. Because what's the impediment to this?
There's a lot of administrative stuff that comes along with this.
It's administrative hoo-ha.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot more. We got to pay people more, got to write special checks twice a year. It's a pain to do it once a year. We got to do 2 sets of appraisals. Thank you. Next consultant, please. That's a horrible idea. We don't want to work with you.
And the timing is always a big
timing.
issue.
There's never a good time, never a bad time, right?
Yeah.
So when I look at a 20-something and say, short-term memory, getting the recognition close to the event is going to be a win when it comes to talking, conversations, and then the recognition and then the rewards. That's what we're shooting for.
Yeah.
It can absolutely not be done with a lot of your classic performance management tools you're using now. It actually can't be done with some of your annual incentive plans. So what needs to be retooled? Appraisals, process, and maybe, a gain share process.
How you're rewarded.
Yeah. So one thing everybody needs to know, we've done this for 3 years now, is a lot of our larger clients, because of omni-channel delivery, we're arguing about who gets credit for what.
Yeah.
Member starts in one channel, ends in another, and 4 people touch it in the organization, and 4 people want credit for the sale. And you can't divide a commission by 4 or, a recognition by 4 because we did it.
I want my whole cookie.
Yeah. So we're overpaying.
Mm-hmm.
Or we're not delivering in the right manner. So a lot of our larger clients are going back to gain share saying, we're successful. So gain share, if anybody hasn't done that in a while, just 3 points real quick. Corporate performance funds a pool. Departmental performance modifies that pool. And then individual performance determines your piece of the pie. So the credit union could have a great year and a department could have a not good year. That's a consequence. Or we could have an okay year and a department have a great year. Thank goodness for you, or we would have stunk it up. And at the individual level, we had a good year, but you not so much.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives that manager a tool and more frequency and a structure to get some recognition out there frequently.
Yep.
So to make this work, appraisals have to be streamlined.
And one of the biggest things, and also why I kind of brought up, looking at a position from a different perspective, because, they just can't do what they need to do at the same time and be able to be a transformative leader. It's the same thing that goes along with this annual review. We don't have 8, 9, 10% budgets to be able to throw at people to be able to keep up with inflation. So we have to reimagine how we're going to approach this. What is something that it motivates individuals? And that's a little bit more often receiving that small bump in that increase in their paycheck that helps bridge that gap. If they have too much month at the end of their money, they're going to be looking, they're going to be going, and they're going to be not focusing on the members. They're going to be focusing on the fact that I can't make ends meet.
Well, that's a good point. When we look at, the psychology of work, you ask today's workforce, what percentage of time do you lose sleep over money? And paying the bills and the basics, that's been on the table for a few years now.
Absolutely. And it's not a matter of giving a larger amount. This is, you've already pre-planned and budgeted for a generalized amount. It's just divided up. Individual performance, company performance, individual performance, company performance.
Now, I'll give you in this model, it could cost you a slight bit more
because
you've got compounding.
Yep, you've got their salaries increase just a little bit past that last bump.
So if I have $10 million of salary in Q1 and I give the average of a 3% raise at that point, so I'm at $1 million, whatever, and then my next set of raises on that compounding number. But you can manage to that budget.
Yeah, it is more, but it's not absurd amount of more, like 8%, 9%
No,
more.
you're not going to the CFO and say, oops.
Hold on, buckle up.
Yeah, I got some good news and bad news. But and then the appraisal process, we've built this whole case today about, it's cumbersome and nobody wants to do it. So we've got to look at some techniques. That's kind of where we're going to pivot now. Again, the difference between 3 and 5% raises, not a lot. I mean, we're talking pennies. So the idea is if we do it more frequently, we're reinforcing that we recognize it and getting the money in our hands a little earlier, but more it's about the recognition, okay? And this is what's going to really be the holy grail to get this type of concept in place if you do multiple type of touch points. Now, with this said, people do, have a lot of clients say, well, we do monthly checkups or check-ins or forms, and great. But let's put some purpose behind it, not just so the manager feels I'm supposed to do this once a month and then I'll get appraised by not doing it and then I'll get docked. And as we know, that means you get one cookie.
One less cookie.
One less cookie, yeah. So let's talk about some of these scales here.
So the concept here is that we're going to be looking more at the future. We don't want to talk about what the manager thinks of the employee. We want to talk more about what they plan to do with that employee. I would always go to this employee when I need extraordinary results. That is a good statement that gives HR good opportunity to say, I see that this person and this individual in this department for this manager is a key provider of disproportionate value. The manager goes to this individual on a consistent basis. When we're dealing with these types of questions, we remove a lot of the biases. Not all of them, nothing can, but we're pulling a lot of those pieces out. It's not complex. It's not convoluted. It's conversational. And if you ask a manager these questions about a particular individual, they should be able to answer them almost instantaneously.
Yeah, and that's the psychology. The beauty part of this is it gives you structure. If I said, Jeff, I've used this story before, like write 1,000-word essay on anything you want.
What's the hardest part?
No, I asked you first.
No, you
answer that question. What's the hardest part?
Getting started. What do I write it about?
Topic.
Yeah.
So if I said, write a 1,000-word essay on what you did for summer vacation, I just gave you structure.
I'm on the road. Yep.
So in this case, psychology. If I say baseball, first word that comes to your mind is?
Sleeping.
Because it's boring, or just idiots
Yeah.
is going to be sleeping.
Yeah, I just became the most hated person in the office just with that
Yeah,
statement. So enjoy that one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, wow. So I don't know
Yeah,
if your
vegans.
DNA works here anymore, quite frankly. But if
Questioning
if
everything.
I came back and said, you asked me first word to ask me
Okay, first word that comes to your mind when I say baseball.
hot dogs,
There you go.
and that's
I cued you.
I'm an eater, I guess.
This is a cued response type of thing. So there's not too much thought that needs to go along with it. You usually get a genuine
Yeah.
response and a
Yeah.
genuine reaction, and it can be done extremely quickly, but they're also actionable. I would promote this employee today if I could. I mean, what could HR do with that kind of knowledge?
So could you, in our audience today, could you imagine? And this came from the accounting world.
It's like the Deloitte.
Deloitte type
Yeah.
of concept of they were spending hours and millions of dollars on a rating process because they wanted something formal to say who's going to be a partner, who's not going to be a partner, and then it came down to saying, look, if you're in charge of a revenue unit and you need to make money or you need to make clients happy, what does it come down to? And it flows, and we use this. Follow the pain.
Yeah.
And
Pain
so
chain.
when your boss says, look, there's a crisis and I need your best people to be there tomorrow to fix it, you got that list in your head,
You already know.
And then, if you could give promotions, if you were the king of whatever and you could knight people, you know who that list is.
And the big thing here is that we really have to train in a certain aspect that we need to be genuine here. Not everybody you would promote.
No,
And if-
because that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Give me your first impression of baseball and sleeping. Got a lot of
I'm
work
going to
do.
sleep.
Yeah, I don't understand.
It's a pastime because it is pastime.
Oh, it's America's pastime, napping.
Napping. It's like
See?
the only thing that equates to that one is, the sport of fishing, going out and sleeping. That's the same thing for me.
As your coach, I needed to ask a probing question, and now it makes a little more sense to me. Thanks, Jeff. So, again, imagine a process where you do your more formal process once a year, but this is your mid-year check-in.
Yeah.
And again, it's coming from the heart. It's intuitive, and you don't have to dwell on these questions. Can we tie this to pay? Absolutely.
Mhm.
You can come up with a quantifiable skill, and we can show you how to do that if you ever want to do that.
The other piece of this is go back to basics. I mean, your managers need to have a back and forth conversation. In many cases, managers, right up at the bullet point there at the top, they're promoted because they're great individual contributors. They've really not had any training to actually really be transformative or really inspire people to do better. They're kind of feeling it out. So giving them some very fundamentals. What should I start doing? What should I stop doing? What should I continue doing? And that works both ways.
Did I just give you a structure?
Yeah.
Said, if you do nothing next week, Jeff, please start ...
That's it.
And I would have a list of that. Oh, I have volumes of that.
Volumes and volumes.
But what did you do really well this week? What do I want you to continue next week? That's on the top of your head.
Yep.
So I think we could position this for frontline managers. This is not a burden,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be pretty swift, and it's going to be defensible because you're not coming out of stuff that's contrived, or it's going to be really pure emotional gut instinct and intuitive because, if I keep asking these questions, it's going to be real consistent on what the answers are.
Yeah, and this is, as we said, we're kind of looking at the future here. In the next 30, 60, 90 days, here's what I would like you to start doing. You're doing this great. That's awesome. Keep doing that. And really, I want to...
Positive, reinforcing,
Exactly.
repetitive, muscle memory, good stuff.
We're not really looking back on, hey, when you did this, it was terrible. And well, I'm glad that you show up on time. But man, you've got to say, yeah, we negative. This is all focused on looking at the future, what you're doing now, what we could do better, and how to be successful in the next 30, 60,
And the
90
how.
days.
If you're my boss, don't make it the three little bears. Too much, too little, just right.
Yep.
Tell me what you want and let me deliver.
And tie this all back to your pillars. What is the mission, vision, and values of the organization, and make sure those are in alignment, because that's when you tie in with the why.
Yeah.
It is so important
Yeah.
that you do
Yeah,
this
yeah.
and you continue doing this because here's why.
Yeah.
So, and the same thing there, we kind of continue on with the future focused idea of things, of how to actually gain some additional growth. And again, that's an opportunity for the manager very quickly, very simply, very easily, back pocket response to be able to say, well, hey, John is very good at this. This is one of his best strengths. He brings it to the table every time. That's where I think you should focus on. He really showed a lot of proclivity and started being very interested in lending. Perhaps we got an opportunity to move them there. Great. I've just given a career path potential and establishment of what they do
But
well.
what's my race?
It
doesn't matter.
3 cookies.
3 cookies.
Yeah. They're those crumble cookies, man.
But that's structure. So in that first page, we looked at the from to, looking at career paths, instead of having 4 levels of MSR, it's like we got 1 level of MSR. And if you're turned on by that, we got a great career path. But if you really got proclivity in loans, I'm identifying and I'm going to set you up for success.
There you go. And it's all talking about the future in the next 30, 60, 90 days. Here's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And so you can put together some very simple and straightforward questions. I mean, this is not rocket science when it comes down to these pieces. But as we talked about, many managers do not even have the fundamentals to be able to do good performance reviews. Yeah. So something that simplifies the process, ask some open dialogue questions. What went well for you this 30, 60, 90-day period? We're not talking about, hey, I'm telling you what you did terrible in the last 90 days. We're talking about what went great. How can we focus on that? In the back of your mind, you say, well, John always is just a little bit late. So you don't say, John, I'm tired of you being late. We got to do this. We can say, John, for the next one, we'd like you to focus in the next 90 days of arriving to set up the notes and things along that line. So you'll need to arrive a little bit earlier. We didn't say, hey, we're tired of you being late. We're saying how you can change that behavior and how you can drive it forward. Same kind of things there. These are what can we do to make it better? How can we actually put these pieces together? Yeah. And most importantly, how can I help you succeed?
Yeah, so we're giving you these examples. It's not like you put these 5 slides together and you have an appraisal.
And
you're
done.
Picking and choosing what works for you. So these are just kind of frameworks and structures that you can think of. And here's another one. It sounds hokey, but if you look at your system now and you're using meets expectations, satisfactory, average,
Oh, and I've got a story about meets expectations. We won't go into that, but just know I've got a story.
Well, nope.
No, we have to. We're running out of. It's going to take up the whole time.
Come on, Jeff.
Well, okay.
Tune in next time for this incredible story.
The summary was that when I was at another life in another institution, I was basically a top performer. I came in, they expected top performance. I got a letter sent out to 39,000 other employees about how good my performance was. Came down to performance review. My manager said I had nothing but the highest expectations, and you met every single one of those expectations. Guess what my rating was? I met expectations. I did better than people that were there for 5+ years, but suddenly I was meeting expectations. I had an argument about that one. I was a little peeved about it. This one it still haunts me.
Jeff Rock therapy hour.
Not a fan of meeting expectations.
No, and semantics mean words hurt, words mean things, words drive behavior.
Absolutely.
So when I do frontline training and I'll talk to a bunch of branch managers, I'll say, raise your hand if you're the definition of average. You're an average employee. To this day, no one's raised their hand. Well, one did, but that's another story.
90% of people think they're above average.
Right. So the self-reporting doesn't work. So we've got to get to this idea of development stage. And so you could use your same system now. If you incorporated this semantics, it's a huge win. And a way to level up your process. Development stage is the most underused concept in credit unions, in my opinion.
And that's not a bad stage.
No.
It is. That's the big thing there.
It's a 5-point scale, right? 1 is horrible, 5 is awesome, 3 is average, satisfactory in the old days. So what's development, Jeff?
Development is when somebody is actually in development phase. They're doing well, but they have some room to grow.
But if I've been accustomed to old system, I'm below average.
Oh no, this
right?
Yeah, this is the 3 is the old 4, I guess it would be, or
exactly
2 is the old 4.
So my story about this system is Jeff's a teller. Jeff's a new teller. I don't put trainee on his badge. Be gentle. He's a trainee. He has no clue what he's doing here. He's had 3 days of
glad I waited in line for this one.
He still doesn't know where the receipt printer, button is. So we look at it this way, and so Monday through Thursday, Jeff is awesome. He cross-sells, he smiles, he's accurate, he proves he gets out of the day, on and on and on. Awesome. Friday's payday. Friday, we get the weirdest request in the world because people are coming in to do, got their paycheck and they've got, pay off a loan, move some money to the grandkid, and, I want $2 bills back or whatever. So it frazzles Jeff because, none of the training really dealt with this
A
system,
little overwhelmed.
right?
Training goes out the window.
So you're a 4 out of 5, 80% for the week. What's your score?
That's a development stage.
In the old days, you were valued because
Yeah.
look at you, 4 out of 5, 80%. Great, because everybody's trying to equate to a education skill. But you're in development stage. Why?
I'm developing.
What if
growing.
I'm the member that only comes in on Fridays? What's my Yelp review of your credit union?
Come back on Wednesdays. We are phenomenal on
I gotta
Wednesday.
come on Fridays. I can't come on Wednesdays. So development means we're not going to lower the bar of expectation because you're new or training or whatever. We're saying, here's what it needs to work here. And by the way, we integrate this into CEO
Yeah.
competency models too. Is just because you're a first time or new CEO doesn't mean we lower the ball to you get your feet on the ground. We say you got to hit the ground running.
Yep.
And so if you're in development stage, nothing wrong with it. But if you can only work on that concept of development, I think you move your overall member experience ahead.
And I could even argue on the valued performer and top performance, the semantics, we could do valued performance, top performance. That way it's not defining the individual, it's defining the attributes that individual is actually performing.
Yeah, great point.
So things like that, just simple, small changes can actually be something pretty big.
And so this is a model that we developed in the 90s. We went to a lot of credit unions and looked at their superstars and what they did. So competency means what a top performer does in most cases with more success than just other employees. So that level 4, you could build a whole performance management system on looking at those 4 competencies. That's the foundation. Is an employee able to prioritize their work? Faced with a member in front of them and a member on the phone, who do they take first? Member with a loan app or a person that wants $12 out of their savings account, who do they prioritize? Are they going to be team players? Are they going to work in their silo? Are they going to learn more about the business? Are they aware of how we make money, how we get appraised or assessed? What's the board expectation of the place? So awareness that we're good. And then can they solve problems? Basically, all consumer interactions is, in theory, I want something, I get something, I pay for it, and I leave. And that happens not all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So are you a good problem solver to trigger out? And in today's environment, not my job description, that's a different department. I'm not allowed to touch that button. I don't know what you're talking about. You'll need to come back Friday when, Jeff's
When
back.
Jeff's not terrible.
when Jeff's not terrible.
He fell asleep in the baseball game again. They just
Yeah.
leave him be.
Napping problem. So you can even build a system on these 4. So these systems that have 10 and 20 pages and 25 metrics or items is too much. How do we boil this down into simple English language, and it's about experience, and we'll be much more successful. So final slide here. This is from Oracle. They have a lot of young folks, brainiacs, programming and doing all kinds of things. And this is what their feed forward means. And Jeff gave us those examples earlier. But the idea of the conversation is, this is what today's generation wants and doesn't want.
Don't tell me how terrible it was. Tell me how to go forward and how to actually do it.
Yeah.
As every time we sit down in a performance review, like we talked about, you're immediately defensive. So when you do actually start talking about the forward focused kind of things, in a lot of cases, you're not listening to that because you're so amped up and ready to defend yourself. So we have to really establish that this is a growth process. It is here to actually help you continue on and grow. You can't change the past. We can change the future. So let's focus there.
So again, the spirit of what we're trying to do today is like, okay, here's 8 comments. What would you do? You want to use 1 or 2, incorporate your form. You want to try a mid-cycle review with the little testers. These are just to give you some information on this.
Fantastic.
Okay, and then there was one more slide I want to get to real quick. Some prompts. When I told you the structured exercise on the 1,000-word essay, if you are a frontline manager and I ask you to at least have a 15-minute conversation with an employee that's not doing so hot, here's some questions that you might look at. Tell the hero concept of like, you're the best at what? what can we do if we need to diagnose something that's just repetitively not doing done, and then where do you want to go? And you framed it very well earlier on those types of questions.
Yeah, and we definitely don't want to frame these as you're the best at this, but we don't throw that one in there. Don't throw that however in there. Even, however is but in a tuxedo. You need to actually make it as an actual guiding kind of thing.
Oh gosh, I'm making a T-shirt out of that one.
However is but in a tuxedo. All right.
Yeah. So, all right, we're almost at the end of our hour here. Just as our recap, really think hard about you can get more recognition and rewards in front of your employees throughout the year. And think about how you can use the appraisal process, not as a risk mitigation tool, but as something as a coaching and counseling tool. And give your frontline managers something in their tool belt that will make sense and move the business along and create the differentiation on member experience. We do this work all the time. We'd love to work with you on this. The transition, we'll be talking about this at our client symposium. Everybody's welcome. It'll be in November. Start looking for those invites because it is a limited seating just because of hotel space,
Size,
I guess,
yeah.
right? So we'd love to see you there.
These days.
What now?
We're at capacity these days. Not yet, but every year we're hitting capacity. So get in early.
Yeah. So yeah, we'd love to see you guys at that. We really appreciate being with us today. Questions? There's a few that we'll get offline to folks that are asking, so don't worry about that. And we'll see you next month.
All right, guys, thank you so much. We do sincerely appreciate you taking the time with us. We will actually send this slide deck out, so you'll receive that, and look for the recording to be posted on the website. Thank you guys so much.
Everybody take care.